I'm just going to get right to it. This isn't, a time for small talk. This is a pretty perilous moment in our history. I believe, Congresswoman, you have used the F word, fascism, to refer to this administration. Senator, I don't believe you have. You've called it authoritarian. What are you looking for in the coming weeks that will tell you that we have really crossed an irreversible line?
We know that Donald Trump's going to do every single thing possible to steal this election, to hang on to power, to deny its legitimacy. There's not any surprise coming in that sense. There may be particular details, but come on. We know this man by now. He has told us who he is. So for me, it's about what are we doing about it and doing about it now? And that is, we got to get people out to vote. Our big chance here is November 3rd. Getting people to vote and getting them to get their friends to vote and getting their friends to get their friends to vote. We can't afford to beat Donald Trump by a little bit. We got to beat Donald Trump by a huge amount. And that's how we reassert the strength of democracy. Alex, what do you think?
I completely agree. I'm not looking for any red flags because he's already thrown out plenty. And he's already said what he's going to do or hinted at what he's going to do. One of the most extremely troubling things that the president has done recently is really signaling that he will not clearly commit to a peaceful transition of power, especially given the details and making this a conditional type of question. And so the thing that we have to do, our first line of defense, is absolutely to overwhelm at the polls, and to overwhelm at the polls in every way possible. To overwhelm in early voting, early in-person voting, mail-in voting, and overwhelming on day of election results. We have to win in every way possible because they are going to exploit any small detail for the purpose of their narrative and for the purpose of making the argument that he should not step down from office.
If irregularities do start to happen, I just wonder, both as members of Congress and as people with prominent voices and with people who are looking to you, is there like a break glass in case of emergency plan?
Well, I think one of the things that's extremely important is that we have to remember that in our democracy, and yes, I'm going to use the word democracy, contrary to Senator Mike Lee, the people have power. We always have power. And I think it's extremely important that people be ready for mass civil demonstration, nonviolent, of course. But we have to make sure that we have a demonstration on the scale of the Women's March in 2017, even larger than that, or on the scale of everything that we saw this year. There need to be immediate political, popular, and social consequences for leadership that refuses to adhere to the rule of law. And that is how democracy, that is how civil society works across the world. And the real key in whether an authoritarian leader, whether it's Trump or otherwise, tries to go with a move or get away with it, frankly, is popular reaction. And we've seen this administration scale back on very disturbing developments due to public backlash and due to popular support or lack thereof. And so I do think it's still important for people to understand that if Donald Trump refuses to acknowledge the results of this election, that we exercise our First Amendment rights, and that we do everything we can, and then for us as elected leaders, as elected officials, depending on those developments, there are provisions in the Constitution and making sure that whether we address this in the House or that we also turn out for critical House seats so that we win over state delegations, that we make sure that we have all the pieces in play for every eventuality.
Well, let me just add to what the Congresswoman said by looking at another part, and that is we shouldn't be letting Republicans off the hook. Look, they have enabled Trump Mitch McConnell should be asked this question every single day. He's down there campaigning in Kentucky, trying to hang on to his seat in a place where he is deeply unpopular. He should be asked at every single event, what is your plan, Mr. Leader of the Senate, if Donald Trump loses the vote and refuses to acknowledge it? What are you planning to do? And every single Republican senator should be asked that. And the reason I emphasize that, it's got two parts. One is it's what we can do right now. And the second is this question should be playing into every Senate race right now. If there's anyone out there who's on the line between, gee, do I still, kind of like my Republican senator and might be willing to send him back, versus I really kind of like this Democrat. Think about whether or not you want a senator who will enable the destruction of our democracy, will enable undercutting our democracy. Keep in mind, all these Republican senators have already said, when the Constitution requires an impeachment hearing, as it did, they all voted to say no witnesses, right? We want to focus on these Republican senators who are up for re-election right now, or Republicans who are coming in and trying to help take new Senate seats. They are the ones who should be answering the question about what they plan to do if the leader of their party is not willing to follow the Constitution following an election.
Speaking of the enablers in the Senate, and particularly their willingness to enable the confirmation of a new Supreme Court justice at this moment, you both had very powerful reactions the night of Justice Ginsburg's passing. Congresswoman, you were on Instagram sort of saying, let this moment radicalize you. And Senator Warren, you gave a speech telling Mitch McConnell, this fight has just begun. But so starting with you, Senator, do you think that your colleagues in the Senate have done enough to fight that fight as aggressively as possible? We're seeing a lot of Democrats on the Judiciary Committee who are taking Amy Coney Barrett's phone calls, despite the fact that Republicans did not deign to speak with Merrick Garland. We're seeing, it's not clear to me that all the procedural roadblocks are being thrown up in the way of this, and that it's being slowed down as aggressively as possible. How do you feel that fight is going right now?
Look, I made it clear. I said I would not meet with Judge Barrett. I am not going to offer any semblance of legitimacy to a process that is illegitimate. Mitch McConnell is trying to steal a second Supreme Court seat, and I'm just not going to be a party to that. So I want to see us in the Senate push as hard as possible. But I want to add this. One thing that makes that pushing more possible, more likely, is public pressure. The more pressure we get, the stronger the Senate is. These things work together. And that's the way we have to remember it. I always go back to what happened in 2017. You remember, the Republicans had the House, had the Senate, and had the White House. I still remember the night after Donald Trump was sworn in, I thought, this is it. They get rid of affordable care by next Friday because they can run the tables and we can't stop them. And sure enough, they passed the repeal in the House. Boom. And you remember, they got out and celebrated, broke out the brewskis, high-fived, because of course, these are people who wanted to high-five over taking away health care for millions of people, over taking away protection for pre-existing conditions from tens of millions of people. But it came to the Senate, and by that point, enough people across this nation had said, I want my senator to hear that I want to keep access to health care. Do not overturn the Affordable Care Act. We walked into the Senate that night. We didn't have the votes. We didn't have them. All the Democrats were in the right place, but there were too many Republicans. They had the majority, and yet 3 Republicans shifted, and that was enough to save health care for tens of millions of people. That's where the energy and the power truly lies. And it wasn't because we had any votes. It was because people pressed. They asked questions. They showed up in the streets. They had rallies. They went to the offices of these Republican senators. We got to do the virtual equivalent of that every single day, because understand this with the Supreme Court. Healthcare, the Affordable Care Act, is on the line. Roe versus Wade is on the line. The right to unionize is on the line. The protection of our earth and climate change are on the line. It's all there. So this is the moment to be pushing on those senators. We get the Democrats. We need to push on the Republicans.
This brings me right where I want to end, which is on the climate. Where are we on climate? Where can we go on climate? And what should our priorities be on day one if there are people who believe in climate change who have power?
We haven't had a climate discussion in a presidential debate in any meaningful way, pretty much ever in my lifetime. And that has led to the fact that holding our elected officials accountable and actually asking substantive questions about climate change doesn't even happen. It becomes what are your thoughts on the Green New Deal? And so that's one issue. But secondly, one thing that is being missed on a colossal level is how much of a sea change that addressing climate change has become as a voting issue in our electorate. We're still thinking that it's a losing issue, that it's a hippie issue, that it's a granola issue, when this is now a top 3 issue for so many voters. People are being displaced. It is contributing to a mass migration crisis. It's become a national security issue. It is now going to become a food and water instability issue. And we still think that this is 10 years ago. And it's not. How it feels as a young person is that we are watching our political leadership betray us in real time. And it is a very unique dynamic that many of us have never experienced before. A lot of times you learn about these betrayals in policy in retrospect. We're watching it in real time. And it is radicalizing young people just like it radicalizes young people on racial justice, on economic justice, and on many other issues as well.
I think we can summarize this by saying that the climate crisis truly is the existential threat to our future, to our planet. We have a president who is making everything worse. Donald Trump is going out of his way. If it's bad, he wants to make it worse. Joe Biden believes in science. That will be a step up. And he understands the urgency of the moment. He has strong plans in order to attack it. It's going to take multiple plans in order to deal with the climate crisis. There is not going to be a one and done. We're going to have a lot of pieces to this because this crisis is monumental. So it is a crisis physically. It is a crisis in our politics. I think the Congresswoman is exactly right. And it's something that we don't have a minute to spare.
Thank you both so much. This is when, if we were doing this in person, Congresswoman, I would give you this gift of a t-shirt, but I can't. I'll have to send it to you in the mail, given the circumstances. Thank you both so much. This was great.
Thank you.